Are you recording, Rhonda? Okay, you are? Oh, there it goes. Okay, I'm going to start the meeting. Let me read the statement, please. As chair of the Hampton Falls School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the Hampton Falls School Board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 646-876-9923 and webinar ID 884-9567-8829, or by clicking on the following website address. That address is listed on our agenda, which you can find on board docs. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the SAU 21 office at www.sau21.org. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-926-8992, extension 103, or email at revans@sau21.org. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Rhonda, can you take the roll call attendance, please?
Sure. Greg Parrish.
Present, family in and out.
Jason Farias.
Present, family in and out.
Jill Swayze. John Bailey.
Present, all in the room.
Anthony Lang.
Present, family in and out.
I have the roll call taken.
Thank you. Okay. Why don't we start the meeting, and let's open the meeting with public comment on tonight's agenda items. Rhonda, do we have anybody who?
It looks like we do have 5 people in attendance. So for anyone that's in attendance, if you would like to make a comment, just please use the button on Zoom that does raise your hand. And then whenever I see that, we'll know you want to make a comment. You do need to provide your full name, address, and your relationship to the school. Greg, at this time, as I'm saying this, I don't see anybody raising their hand other than Jill, who is here now. So I will bring her in as a panelist. Otherwise, I don't see anybody raising their hand for a public comment.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and close public comment and move on to our minutes from December 8th. Can I get a motion on those minutes, please?
I'll make a motion to accept
approve the minutes as presented.
from December 8th.
Go ahead, Jason.
Can I get a
I'll make a
second?
motion. Yeah, good.
Discussion. Okay, seeing there's no discussion, Wanda, can we take a roll call to accept those minutes as presented?
Sorry. Just going to do this again. I added Jill in here. I'm going to see if her name pops up now. And I have yes, I have Jason making the motion and John seconding and Greg Parrish.
Yes.
Jason Farias,
Yes.
Jill Swayze,
Yes.
John Bailey,
Yes.
and Anthony Lang.
Yes.
I have the vote recorded.
Thank you. We'll move on to principals report. Beth, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Sure, I'll keep it very short in the interest. I know that we only have a half-hour meeting, but I just want to let everyone know out there that kindergarten registration for next September's class of 2021-22 is already open. Anybody that would like to register a child can do so online. It's on the front page, front and center of our website. And all the information is there for people. And I know some parents have helped me out with some notifications online as well. Other than that, we continue to manage the COVID situation. We're doing really well with it, considering we expected a surge after the holidays. Our pod system is still working. We have a couple of families that have been in need of some care from LAS families and staff, so we have helped them out with that. But other than that, we're strong. We're doing well. So we cross our fingers and take it day by day.
Anyone have any questions for Beth?
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Beth.
Beth.
Amazing as
Good to
always.
hear.
Keep up the good
Thanks.
work.
Great
You
job,
know,
Beth.
in the budget process, I'm going to ask for a Zamboni, just so you know, because the rink showed up.
Oh, did it? Nice.
Matt, I don't want you to choke at that, but it's only about 12 grand.
Oh, warrant article.
I'm joking, but the rink's here. We'll set it up on Saturday.
Great. Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Matt, financials.
Yeah, so we've included both the expenditure year-to-date and revenue year-to-date reports in board docs. We are tracking or progressing very well for this year. I won't go into great detail. However, I do want to touch upon some revenue sources. As you're aware, we did receive some ESSER funds via the CARES Act earlier this year, only about $9,000 because that was based upon Title I funding, which Hampton Falls receives very little of. However, we did receive a second round of funding via the state, which came from that CARES Act stimulus package in the amount of $43,000. This was $200 per student via the Supplemental Public School Response Fund. And I'm sure you've seen in the news that we are receiving another round of funding via the second stimulus package at the federal level. Again, this is based, we anticipate this will be structured the same as that initial round of funding, which is based on title funding. So we don't expect much. However, it is a larger sum of funds. So it'll be approximate. We're guesstimating about 4 times that original amount. So, you know, in the ballpark of $35,000, $36,000 that we will have to, you know, look at how we're going to allocate for the remainder of this year and going into next year. We do have a longer time horizon to utilize those funds as long as they are COVID related. I will note that, like I said, we're tracking very well. Last year, as you all know, we returned $340,000 in unexpended funds from unreserved fund balance. We took great care to you know, when we went remote, that we had the philosophy that we want to return those funds to our community. We knew that our community was potentially struggling both from tax revenues and individuals, you know, community members who may have had a financial impact from this economic crisis. And similarly, we expect you know, we will, as of now, we should be returning a decent sized unreserved fund balance at the close of this year. Now, granted, we have another 6 months to go. However, we are tracking that way. You know, similarly, at Winnicott last year, we returned $1.2 million, of which, Hampton Falls received, I think it was about $80,000. So we do anticipate, returning funds to the community, based on current conditions. Obviously, with the uncertainty of the pandemic, things could change rapidly. We do have extra expenses with PPE, with disinfecting, with running a school in this unique new model, social distancing, all the signage, etc. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. One other note I do want to mention, we are of course monitoring a potential future legislation. There is a potential for another stimulus package, based on this most recent Senate runoff. We're hearing a lot of talk about another stimulus package. However, that is certainly uncertain. But we will update you if we hear any more in regard to future stimulus packages. So now I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Matt? Matt, I have one quick question. That money that comes in from the state as well as federal, and it's recognized as revenue, does that just go to our, and for a lack of a better word here, our bottom line for this year's budget, or does it go into a special account?
So the 2 rounds of funding that we've received, so the $9,000 in CARES ESSER funds, that was allocated like our other grant funding. So that is reflected in our expenditure report. So that comes off in those accounts. But the Supplemental Public School Response Act, that was offsetting revenue. So that you'll see in the revenue report as extra or unanticipated revenue. So
Okay.
So that will affect the bottom line. That being said, we did have to associate every dollar with an expenditure.
Okay.
So now, would we have spent that anyway? Yes, but so it is just extra. But we do have to back up every dollar with an invoice and exactly how we spent, and it has to associate with COVID-19 related expenditures.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for Matt? Thanks, Matt. Why don't we move on to continuing business and voting at Lincoln Ackerman School. Rhonda, can you bring JP in as a panelist? Everyone, as Rhonda's doing that, JB has decided to join us tonight to discuss voting at Lincoln Ackerman, and we will actually vote on this just to go on record. So JP, I'm going to give you the floor right now. I'm not sure if you have a prepared statement or if you have questions, but it's up to you right now.
Or pardon my thumb there as I try to get this video oriented a little better. I don't have a prepared statement. I just primarily wanted to confirm that for purposes of the March 9th local elections, as well as our expectation going forward, is to have those elections at the Lincoln Ackerman School facilities, and along the lines of what Beth and I reviewed on site subsequent to, I think, 3 meetings ago, as far as the board meetings go. And the basic idea being to use the cafeteria space as our primary voting space, and particular halls around that to minimize any use of areas where other operations might be going on. I don't think we have any outstanding issues in terms of the efficacy of that facility, in terms of parking and signage, traffic flow, foot traffic, some of the logistics regarding setup and breakdown as well. Obviously, it would require some coordination with the school and with Alan in particular to make sure that we had opportunity to set things up prior to Election Day, and then of course clear them out in a timely fashion. I think ultimately we recognize that the gymnasium space is probably better suited just to isolate where we're impacting the facility, but with the current use of the gymnasium for storage of some equipment, and I expect that would continue for the foreseeable future. Our plans going forward are to use the cafeteria space. So not really having a prepared statement, as I said, primarily just looking to make sure that the board has no other concerns or issues or questions that we should be addressing before we move forward here.
No, I don't believe the board has issues with this, JP. We talked about it the last couple of meetings. The only concern I would have is depending on how COVID plays out here in the next few months, and we just don't know what that's going to be. I just want to reserve the right that we can discuss, I guess, the flow of traffic through the building as we come up on the March election there, just to minimize, like you said, traffic throughout the rest of the building. I think it's a great idea. We're using the facility, but I just would ask that we can reserve the right to have that discussion if needed.
Absolutely. And I think, Beth, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm not sure how to identify the specific flow that we discussed, but the entrance, the non-gymnasium entrance on the west side of the building, close to the gym, would be the entry point. And that, so that's just south of the old 5 through 8 wing, the 1985 wing. Coming in through that point, heading towards the cafeteria, and then egressing from the south door near the kitchen. That would prevent use of the oldest part of the building, where I expect there'll be other operations and activities taking place, and hopefully keeps the use of the facility to the smallest footprint possible.
That's correct. Thank you so much. I mean, I thought we had a great meeting, and those are the areas that we identified for a traffic flow. I don't know what March will bring in terms of COVID, but, and then staff will not be in the building that day anyway, as I have learned. So that works perfectly for us. And in the future, of course, we can open up that further.
JP, the only other question I have for you is, obviously this is a new voting location for the town. And the town will certainly notify the public. Will you be reaching out to Jay so that they can put the that electronic signboard up sooner rather than later as we approach elections, so people know what to do or where to go? I didn't know if that was in your plan of attack or not, but it's I guess a suggestion of mine.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I have not communicated with Jay specifically on the issue. Tomorrow is the town board meeting, and I will be at that as well. And I will raise that and probably be the one tasked to talking with Jay to have that sign out. I would ask, in addition, to the extent, for whatever time period makes sense for use of the board in front of the LAS facility, having something there as well.
Sure.
Obviously, people won't be necessarily looking there to find information, and I think the road sign is a better way to get the word out. But the town board is certainly aware of the need to communicate the issue. Part of our plan will be to have at least one person staffing the town hall and signage there, even on the day of election, to redirect people. And I think the only other thing I would do is probably get permission to keep the doors open a few extra minutes in case at the last minute somebody shows up at the town hall and needs an extra 5 minutes to get over to the school.
Mhm.
I was planning on joining you tomorrow night, JP, at the meeting, just to answer any questions if they came up. Unfortunately, I have a policy meeting. Would you like a board member there with you to answer any questions that may come up for the school, or are you fine?
I'm pretty comfortable. Having said that, however, if a question comes from the select board that really requires the voice of somebody on the committee to speak to, it would be helpful to have a board representative there.
Are there any board members who are available tomorrow that could join JP at the town hall for the their regular meeting? And I believe it's their budget meeting as well.
Do that, Greg.
And Greg, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but if anybody needs it, I could also speak to it as well tomorrow night.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't get the board's answer there. Anybody available?
Greg, I'm available to do it if need be. Sure.
Okay, can you do that then?
Sure. JP, is that in person or is that on Zoom?
That's a great question. I have such advanced planning. I determined at about 5:30 today that this meeting was on Zoom. So I should know that in about 23 hours.
John, they have been holding meetings in person.
They have. Okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
And you go through the front entrance like we did when we voted. Well, at least you did. And masks are required.
Understood.
Would you like Beth there? John?
If Beth can join me, that's great.
Okay. And JP, I just wanted to clarify that the handicap entrance is through the art gallery door, which is in the back of the building as well. I don't know if you clarified that or if you want signage for that.
So that's the same door that we spoke of for the main point of entry. Yes. So
Okay.
anyone who requires handicap egress, which up until now, nobody's required it.
Okay.
So and correct me if I'm wrong, but the door near the kitchen, does that also not have a ramp, or is there a step before the ramp?
It's a step. It does not have a ramp.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to clarify it.
I'm glad you did. I will, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Okay.
I think that the main concern at the town hall was, it was more than a single step. It was several steps. And I think with that single step in the ramp, we've never had somebody even show up in a wheelchair. So I think we'll be okay.
Okay, great.
If necessary, we'll escort them out the way they came in.
Okay, thank you.
And Beth, just so you know, you've got a far longer commute to get there than I do. I'm happy to handle it solo if you want.
Perfect. Thank you. And if you have any questions, just give me a shout.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions for JP? Seeing there's no questions, JP, do you have anything else?
I do not.
Okay.
I appreciate the school board's efforts in helping us improve our voting, our polling location. So thank you. Look forward to it.
Absolutely. That being said, I'd like to make a motion to, I don't know the exact language here, Rhonda, to give the town permission to use the school as their voting location for the March 2021 elections and moving forward.
I'll second.
Okay, so I've entered it as motion to grant approval for the town to use the LAS facility for voting, for voting beginning March 2021 and moving forward.
That sounds great. And possibly JP, before we vote, JP, maybe we can revisit the moving forward after the election.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. We got Jill second. Can we do a roll call vote, Rhonda?
Yes. Greg Parrish,
Yes.
Jason Farias,
Yes.
Jill Swayze,
You're muted, Joe.
Yes. Sorry.
John Bailey
Yes.
and Anthony Lang.
Yes.
Okay, I have that vote recorded.
Thank you. Because we're pressed on time, Caroline, what I'd like to do is the policies of the second read. Can we bump that out to next month?
We can, I don't see why not.
Okay,
I mean,
Okay.
because I want to move down to the permanent superintendent search before we go into our public hearing.
Greg, the other
Um,
thing we could do is just
yeah.
when we recess and go into the public hearing, we can reconvene it after the public hearing and do the policies if you want.
Right.
I'm fine with that. Or do you want to go ahead and do the policies and then reconvene for the superintendent search conversation?
We've got 2 minutes, so whatever's the shortest, maybe.
yeah, you may want to do the policies now as
Yeah.
it's the second read. And I know you wanted to have a discussion about the search, so you may want
Yeah.
more time for that.
So why don't we go ahead, let's do our second read on the policies. We will take our break, go into our public hearing, and then we'll reconvene to discuss the permanent superintendent search update, if the board is okay with that. So policies, second read. Do we have any questions? Okay, seeing there's no questions, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the second read of the policies as presented.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Rhonda, can we take roll call?
Sure. Was that Jason or Anthony that seconded them?
That was me, Anthony.
Anthony, okay. All right, Greg Parrish,
Yes.
Jason Farias,
Yes.
Jill Swayze,
Yes.
you're muted.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. John Bailey
Yes.
and Anthony Lang.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded.
Thank you. Matt, it's a recess we're going into, correct?
Correct. We're not adjourning. We're just recessing.
Can I make a motion to go into recess to present our budget at our public hearing?
I'll second.
And who, I'm sorry, I didn't hear who made the first motion.
I did,
Okay,
Greg. And then Jay did the second.
okay. All right, Greg Parrish,
Yes.
Anthony Lang,
Yes.
Jason Farias,
Yes.
John Bailey,
Yes.
and Jill Swayze.
Gave me some time that time. Thank you. Yes.
All right, you guys are now in recess. I did not set up a different Zoom. It's the same information, so it's all going to be on the same recording. We can edit that out if we need to and separate it, but as of now, it's all going to be on this one. So,
That's fine.
okay.
Do we need a motion to open the public hearing? Or
No,
do we just, no? So we can
No.
just begin?
Mhm.
Okay, bear with me for a minute. Okay, okay. If the board's all set, I will open the public hearing for our budget for the 2021-2022 school year. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Principal Rossi and Matt Ferrara, our business administrator, and their teams for putting this budget together. The board had kind of one direction for the administration, and that was to have as minimal increase in our budget for the upcoming school year as possible. With everything going on right now, we felt it was important to do that. And as you will find out, the administration has done an outstanding job in putting together our budget. And, as a board member, I'm very proud to put this out there tonight. That being said, I'm going to turn this over to Matt, He will be doing the presentation this evening. Matt, before you begin, though, I do have one question for you. In the past, we have taken questions either at the end of your presentation or during it. Do you have a preference tonight?
I do not have a preference. I will just need if Rhonda to notify me if someone's asking a question throughout the presentation, because they'd be raising their hand via that function. So,
Does the board have a thought? Okay. I think if it's okay with you, Matt, last year we did it as you proceeded through the budget. So for the public out there that's listening, if you have a question during the budget, can you raise your hand? Rhonda would then, I'll give you permission to ask your question. We'll proceed forward with an answer. That being said, Matt.
Rhonda, can you give me access to share my screen, please?
Sorry, Matt, I gave myself access and started sharing. I think you should be able to now.
All right, I got it. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you. Good evening. So I will be presenting the proposed 2021-2022 operating budget and associated warrant articles for Hampton Falls this evening. I will reiterate Greg's, or the school board's directive to try to keep costs at a minimum. We all understand that our communities are struggling. We anticipate tax revenues to decline. We also know that individual families are struggling financially through this economic crisis. So we took great care in bringing forth a budget that took that into consideration, while still providing us the opportunity to operate a school district in a school that provides for the proper learning opportunities for our students to achieve our mission and our vision at Lincoln Ackerman.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you. I have information from Mr. Janik that he is trying to make a comment. He is calling in, so he does not have access to do the raise my hand feature. I don't know if he wants to speak now or if he wants to wait. But he has reached out to me and said he wanted to make a comment.
Okay, if you want to give him access.
Okay.
I have no problem with that.
And I just need to make sure I'm getting the right phone number here. The 617-908-1428. I'm going to give that number permission to talk. Mr. Janik, is that you at 617-908-1428? You will have to unmute yourself. Mr. Janik, we've given you permission to talk. It does look like you're in the meeting. I cannot unmute you. You will have to do that yourself. I have opened the line to allow him to talk, but he needs to unmute himself.
There he goes.
Okay. Mr. Janik, we're giving you the opportunity to talk if you would like to say something. It looks like you have unmuted yourself, but Mr. Janik, are you 617-908-1428? We have given you permission to speak at the meeting. We would also encourage you, if you could log into Zoom through a smartphone or a computer or laptop, you would have full access. It does show that your phone is connected. We have granted you permission to speak. We've requested that you unmute yourself. It looks like you have done that. No, it looks like you've muted yourself again. So Matt, I'll just keep an eye on this, and if I see that he unmutes himself again, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Yeah, and Don, if you're able to reconnect, we'd be happy to entertain any comments or questions. So as I was saying, you know, when we go through that budget development process, we try to align how we allocate resources, how we fund our budget to our core mission and values. And that's really to
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Is this the school board?
Yes, it is.
Do I have permission to speak?
Yeah, Don, this is Greg Parrish. You have permission to go ahead and speak. We've given that permission to you.
Okay, I called in at 5 minutes to 6, and I attempted to join the meeting, and I did, when I could not get in or you could not hear me, I went back and sent an email to revans@sau21.org. Then I called her number and now sent you 103 like we're supposed to. For the whole half hour, I could hear you off and on, but you would not recognize me for the whole school board meeting from 6 o'clock until just now. And now I'm back to my phone, and I'd like to, know why I couldn't participate in the first half hour of the school board meeting. I did have some questions, and I feel that I should have been able to ask that. You didn't even recognize me.
We're sorry about that. If you want to proceed forward with your questions, we'll do what we can to answer them.
Okay, should I go back to the school board meeting and start with those questions?
How many questions do you have regarding the school board, Don?
Okay, I have a lot of questions for the school board.
Why don't, we're going to reconvene if you want to join us after the public hearing regarding the budget and ask some of your questions then. I think that's probably more advantageous than to take up the budget hearing with actual school board questions, if you don't mind.
I really think that would probably be the way to go, though I do mind intensely because, I was not able to participate when you said I could. So anyway, let's start with this one. Okay.
I understand that, and we apologize. Do you have questions regarding the budget you want to ask at this point?
I guess, are we going to go along with Matt presenting the budget and then I can ask questions as he goes along? Is that how you want to do this?
Let me ask you this. Are you logged on? Are you online or are you just on your smartphone?
I'm just on my phone.
Okay. So what we're going to do, Don, is proceed forward like we have in the past. And if you have a question during the presentation, somehow notify Rhonda and then you can ask your question. Is that okay? Rhonda, did we lose him?
No, it shows he's still connected.
Yeah.
The number's been on there. His email came in to me at 6:14 and I have his voicemail at 6:19 is when I received it. So, once I was aware of that, I did, that's when I interrupted the public hearing and we tried for several minutes to get in contact with him. So I can disable his talking until the presentation's over, or let me know what you would like me to do.
Why don't we proceed forward? Let's disable the talking right now, and then if Don has a question, to have him notify you, and then we can go there. Caroline, I don't know if you have a thought on that.
Okay,
I think that makes sense.
I'm
Greg.
here.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
I've just disabled talking and then I'll open that back up once Matt's presentation is done. Unless
Okay.
I get an email from him earlier.
In a And again, Don, if you any questions throughout this presentation, please just flag Rhonda and be happy to pause to answer any of your questions. My apologies. As I was saying, we do align our budget, or we attempt to align our budget and our how we allocate resources and funding to our core mission and values. This year, we did identify 4 primary priorities that are embedded in the budget. That includes the year 2 of our STEM program, which we instituted last year. Enhancement of our school culture and climate through social emotional learning programs, as well as staff trainings to get our staff up to speed to implement those programs. Professional learning in SEL and competency-based education. So as you know, we are well into our CBE implementation, and Dr. Hobbs has really worked hard to continue that progress, and Lincoln Ackerman has really taken a leadership role with their curriculum coordinators leadership team to continue that CBE work. Additionally, we are looking to maintain a clean and safe facilities for all of our staff and students to learn and work in. So when developing a budget, enrollment is a key data point that we look at. As you are aware, we were planning to conduct enrollment projections this year for this budget process. However, due to COVID and the disruption to enrollments this year, we felt it prudent to delay it 1 year for that to contract an outside firm to conduct those projections due to data integrity. However, we do have a pretty good gauge of next year's enrollment based on our current enrollments this year of 192. And then we did reach out to families who are homeschooling or in private school to determine how many are planned to come back next year, assuming that we're in a post-pandemic in a safe environment. I'll also note that this budget is predicated on the assumption that we are back to normal operation with no COVID restrictions. So for 2021, 2022, we are projecting 203 students. This is a decline from the previous years, and that is reflected in some of our budget decisions that's embedded in this proposal, including reductions and eliminations of positions. So the proposed operating budget is $6,867,251, and that does reflect a decrease of 1.27%, or an $88,027 reduction from the 2020-2021 budget. In addition, the proposed operating budget is $23,802, or 0.35% lower than the default budget. And the default budget is $6,891,053. So this really reflects the hard work and the prioritization that we took. There were some hard decisions that we had to make. It was not easy to make some of these reductions, but we did take a look at all of our discretionary accounts and to look at where we could potentially cut costs while trying to minimize the effect on student learning. And that's with some contractual and legally mandated expenditures that did rise, or we do anticipate rising next year. So embedded in this budget is a cost of living adjustment for 3 employee classifications. We have our teachers, so they fall under the C collective bargaining agreement. So that was a separate warrant article, a 4-year warrant article that does call for 2.75% cost of living adjustment for all of our certified staff and teachers. Additionally, our other CBA is for the Seacoast Education Personnel Association, CESPA. And this covers all of our educational associates or our paraprofessionals, and that calls for a 1% cost of living adjustment. And the final group of employees are our non-union employees. So that would be our administrators, our technology staff, administrative assistants, food service, and our facilities team. How we determine the cost of living adjustment for these employees is based on inflation. So we take a look at the Consumer Price Index, CPI, for our geographic region from July to July. So in this case, it'd be July of 2019 to July of 2020, and the rate of inflation or the CPI was 0.8%. So we have included a 0.8% cost of living adjustment for those non-union employees in this budget. So as I alluded to, there are a number of budget drivers in this proposed operating budget. So like I said, we do have a focus on maintaining our current programming and high level of service, but we did take a hard look at our budget priorities and where we could potentially cut expenditures. There's no new initiatives in this budget. No new investments. It is truly maintenance of the existing programming that we currently have, and this is again in consideration of the economic challenges and revenue headwinds that our communities are facing. So a few of the primary or significant budget drivers for this budget include retirement. So the New Hampshire retirement system this year is increasing the employer contribution for retirement contributions for our teachers and all of our staff by a significant margin. So 3.22% for our teachers and 2.89% for all of our other full-time staff. This is a significant hit. So that's bringing roughly, for our teachers, it's bringing that employer contribution rate from roughly 17 or 18% to 21%. And for our other staff, it's going up to, I believe, 12 to 15%. So this has a significant impact on our budget and reflects an $84,116 increase from prior year. Unfortunately, the state has an unfunded pension obligation. This is decades in the making. So they are currently looking to address that situation. Unfortunately, that affects us at the local level, even though that this is a state mandate. Additionally, our special education transportation account is increasing by $43,842, and again, this account is based on student need. Per the individual student's IEP, which is mandated by state and federal law, based on the services that student may require, or students. Our health insurance, on the opposite side, we do have some decreases. For example, health insurance is decreasing by $77,457. So we are fortunate to have a decrease or a modest increase in our guaranteed maximum rate, GMR. So that's the guaranteed maximum that health insurance premiums could increase. We won't get the actual rate until March, but we budget for that maximum because oftentimes that ends up being the actual rate. However, we are in addition to having a modest increase, we're also eliminating 3 full-time employees benefits packages, so that reduces our health insurance obligation. Another driver includes new technology equipment, which is being reduced by $56,800, and that reflects last year's one-time investment in our wireless upgrade project. So if you recall, in this current school year's budget, we we installed a new wireless infrastructure upgrade with access points and wiring. And that was a one-time expenditure. So this is being reduced to normal spending levels for our typical technology investment, which includes replacement cycles for laptops, for computers, etc. Additionally, we're seeing decreases due to the elimination of one full-time classroom teacher position, the elimination of one full-time educational associate, and the reduction of a school psychologist and case manager position from a full-time 1.0 equivalency to a 0.6, so a 60% position. So that brings us into kind of the detail of the budget. I'm going to go department by department and provide the major reason for any variance, whether that's an increase or a decrease. So for the first account we have, or department, we have regular education, which is budgeted at $1,817,037. So this is actually a decrease of $33,612, which is a reduction of 1.82%. So that reflects that elimination of a full-time classroom teacher, as well as reductions in our supplies accounts, our books, print, media account, and our equipment account. So those decreases were slightly offset, and that based on some increases that we had, primarily due to the collective bargaining agreement. So as I had mentioned earlier, there is a cost of living adjustment embedded throughout this budget. So this account is the bulk of our teachers in our EAs. So that reflects a 2.75% cost of living adjustment for our teachers and the 1.0% cost of living adjustment for our EAs. Moving on.
I do have somebody raising their hand with a question. Yeah. I'm gonna, just like when we have public comment under a meeting, whenever we give you permission to speak, we need you to state your full name and your address and your relationship with the school. Looks like Kimberly Belmore, but if you could please provide us with your full name, address, and relationship with the school.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Kimberly Belmore. I'm at 26 Crystal Drive, and I have a first grader and a second grader in the school. I'm speaking as a parent and also as a teacher in a different district. I'm just wondering how, I see that you're cutting the psychologist, you're cutting a case manager in half. With 203 students, are you able to accurately predict the amount of students that are going to be, needing special ed next year? The students that are currently receiving like RTI, response to intervention currently, how many of those students would be being pushed forward to special ed? I just truly believe that cutting these positions, you're setting the teachers up, you're setting the children up, the children that need the most up for failure. I have major concerns with this, and I'm hoping you're able to address how you got these numbers. And also a psychologist, that is a huge position in the school. And every time an IEP is up, those psychologists need to do a lot of work on the children. So you're going to be hiring from a consult, which will ultimately be a lot of money that you're going to be paying through a different company. So can you just explain how you got these numbers and how you can justify cutting these positions? I'd appreciate it.
Certainly. So I guess I'll start with the school psychologist, since my wife is a school psychologist. So I'm pretty intimately involved or aware of what they do. So we're not contracting out a school psychologist. We're just reducing the position from a full-time to a 0.6%. And that's, and I will also note that we're not, we're not cutting any teachers or positions, actual people. We have we have natural turnover. So these are all individuals that are already leaving, or positions that we can move around that are leaving the district. And in all of these cases, we base it on student needs. So we had determined early on that school psychologist, the services necessary at Lincoln Ackerman did not warrant a full-time school psychologist, and that's based on our numbers currently, and where we stand with as far as the services that are required with our current students. So obviously that could change in future years, and we would adjust accordingly. But in all of these cases, where it's essentially a math equation where you take a look at the sizes of the classrooms, how many students are in each class, and there was really no justification that we could make to keep those classrooms at those sizes. These are still pretty small class sizes, with which I think Beth can probably speak to her comfortability with these class sizes, but they're within the school board policy for class sizes, and we are maintaining small classes for just that point. As far as we do understand that there is some additional social emotional learning needs required. We do have we do have the
RTI.
RTI that's addressing those tier 2 students. So I don't know, Beth or Caroline, if you want to speak to it more, but it's when we've seen a decline in enrollment, it warrants a decrease in staff. It's as simple as that.
Matt, I just would like to clarify one thing. Yes, we do have natural transition out with retirements, et cetera, but we are cutting a classroom teacher. I want to be clear about that. Our numbers, Kim, are declining. There's no doubt about that. I think we are trying to get ahead of the curve with kindergarten registrations for next year, because that's unclear to us based on some of the typical ways we have known what children are out there that will register for kindergarten. So because of COVID, so we're trying to get out there with that. But other than that, I do believe our numbers have declined to the point where we knew this was coming, and we're preparing for it. So we do feel as though our IEPs will be covered, our needs will be covered. I think that the number that is not known to us is what will our student population be out there for September. We've had a number of families that have decided to homeschool. We have many students that have gone remote. I mean, if we include all of those, plus others that have moved into town that we know that are homeschooled, that's the variable out there, is what will our final numbers be. And I think we will come back to the board with that if they do increase. But
I can add.
Pardon me?
Are you all set, Beth?
Yeah, go ahead.
Cut you off. Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I really appreciate that question. I really appreciate when someone's asking about, the social emotional health and how can we predict the special education numbers. While it's true, we won't know the numbers exactly. Lincoln Ackerman has been right on target, consistent with the state average of identified students with disabilities. And, as far as the tier 2, so supports for students who are not in special education, Lincoln Ackerman has an incredible social emotional program, a robust program. They still have the school counselor. And the school counselor is the person who leads that charge at the school, is a model. She teaches classes. She's a resource for the regular ed teachers. So she transfers that knowledge across the entire curriculum. And those are some of the things that prevent over-identifying students at Lincoln Ackerman. So we felt comfortable saying that we can contract out just for the 3-year evaluations for students, because we are addressing the needs of counseling, social emotional health, and wellness for students across all the grades, given the staff and the culture that Beth and her staff have cultivated there. So that's why we're comfortable with these changes.
We have another hand that's up, Matt.
Rhonda, before you go there, Kimberly, did that get your questions answered?
It looks like
Yes,
she's,
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
okay, I have a second person with their hand raised. It looks like Jillian Tanita. If you can please just provide us with your full name. Looks like the version of Zoom you're using is older, so I'm going to have to bring you in as a panelist. So just so you're aware of that. Hi.
Jillian,
Okay,
you
can
have-
you hear me? Hi, everyone. I don't know. Hold on. Can you hear me, see me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so I know I sound exactly like the last person because that's my sister, but Jillian Tanita, 161 Kensington Road, and it is a different person calling in. So I have 4 children in the school. I also have a child who's in special ed who has a lot of needs. So I'm just trying to understand. I do have several questions. And so are you cutting right now you currently have 3 case managers. Is that going to be looking at 1.6? Is that right?
No, it's going to be 2.6.
Did you hear that answer, Ms. Tanita? I wonder if we lost
Did
her.
we lose her?
Yeah, I don't see her in the.
She's
Oh. Sorry, I guess my internet maybe is unstable. I couldn't hear. What was it? How many case managers?
So it's going to be 2.6, a reduction from 3.
Okay. So I guess my question is, how does that change in regards to caseload per case manager per student?
I think it goes from like 9 to 12, even less than that. It's very minimal. It's like one. Beth, do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it is very minimal. It's a very manageable caseload, Jillian.
Okay, I guess my biggest question would be then how many students are going out to justify the drop? I mean, is there a lot of students in 8th grade who are, going out from the system? I don't know.
I don't think
you're on target there, Jillian. I think that the caseload is already very low and it's expected to remain that way. And our enrollment has declined a bit, so the caseloads will be still very manageable.
Okay, because I guess, my biggest concern as a parent of a child who, has severe needs is that, this is, as everyone knows here, it's federal, it's state. This is not about options or choices. I was shocked to see that a special ed budget, I've never seen a special ed budget, touched in this way. And it's only $32,000 it looks to be able to provide what you currently have. I'm just really surprised, especially not knowing that, kindergarten, 1st grade, you really don't start even testing till 2nd grade, 3rd grade. I wouldn't, if you told me 5 years ago that my son would need as much need as he does, I don't think I would have known that. And so I just think that when looking at the budget, I'm just very surprised that area has been touched. Does that mean the services are going to be less with the case managers, that they're able to, how much, is that going to change their amount of minutes that they're working with them? I mean, there's a lot of questions there with that.
No, you're not on target there. Our services will remain the same. Any child that has been determined to have services, all of those are very intact. None of that will change.
Jill, these are good questions. Beth and Matt, I just want to maybe speak to, you mentioned it, I think before, you forecasted as best as you could what the incoming enrollments would be. As September rolls around, can you explain how you would reevaluate or if numbers do change drastically, how you would prefer to pivot and readjust if necessary?
Certainly. So, I mean, we're fairly confident in these numbers
Sure.
as of today. Obviously, that can change. So if that is the case, then we have a few levers that we can pull. One, if it's special education related, we have the Special Education Expendable Trust that we can tap into. And that's we have a healthy balance
Right.
in that trust. I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say we're 200,000 plus. Additionally, we have this most recent stimulus funding that I had just mentioned of $35,000 that we do not have to spend until, I believe, September of 2022. So we'll likely have those funds available next fall, because we would look at expending the operating budget this year prior to touching those funds. Additionally, as is the case with any unexpended cost, we would look at just where there's recognized savings and tapping those funds potentially if we have an unexpected expenditure. So I'm confident that if enrollment did increase and we did need to hire or contract out some additional services, that we absolutely could. We would need significant enrollment increases for that to be warranted.
Understood.
We're not at that level. So.
Matt, it's Greg. We've got about a little over 213,000 in that trust.
Thanks, Greg.
I'm good for something.
That's my assistant, Greg Parrish.
Sorry, I'm still here. So I guess, listening to all of you, I still question, the jump from an 8 to a 12, if that's what it is for a caseload. I mean, IEPs, the amount of time that they have to spend with planning, working on the IEPs, being able to provide services and be able to get everything done. If we go back to a full day schedule and I just really, really doubt and question if the services in the minutes that we need right now and what the children are supposed to get on the IPs, how are you going to meet that if you're cutting it down to a 2.6? Who's going to take the hit on that? And what about an EA? Is the reason you got rid of the EAs because a child who's exiting doesn't need an EA? I mean, I just think that with special ed, with the state and the federal, it's very unpredictable with, where you're coming. And as much as you say you want to predict who's coming in, who's coming what, I'm pretty confident that in kindergarten or first grade, when you saw my son, you would be able to predict the amount of needs and what he requires for special ed now. So I just think that that's not quite I understand your answer, but I just think that's not quite it. And I just really, really hope that the services are not going to start getting decreased, and we're going to have bigger problems with, having people who are not able to get what they need. So I just think that as a school board, I encourage you to look into special ed law and into state and federal laws and what's required and what the children actually need, not what we want, but what the children actually need, and making sure that where you're cutting is not something that's going to hurt these children, because it's already difficult enough for them. So that's basically what I want to say.
I thank you, and I greatly appreciate that sentiment, and I agree with the so we operate with the philosophy that we invest early and proactively with early intervention with their students, because that's been proven to save money long term by addressing issues with students early on in their educational career. And ultimately that saves money. So I agree with that 100%. I am also 100% confident that our staffing levels can more than service our students. Now, to your point, if something changes, we will absolutely expend funds to address those needs. And that's the purpose of the expendable trust, the special education expendable trust. So if the need arises, then we will absolutely tap into that fund and make an investment if that's necessary. And I'll also point out that our director of special services, Ms. McKeon, is very supportive of this plan and is very comfortable that we can more than service our students. Caroline, I don't know if there's anything more that you want to add to this topic.
Sure. Just that, first, I just want to reiterate, I'm so encouraged, and I love the support for special education and the concern. However, the typical caseload, if it's a comfort, the typical caseload for a case manager is usually more than 12. It's between 12 to 15. So it's true that Melissa McKeon and I and Beth, we took a look at this and felt comfortable with this. And it's for a few factors. It's because of decline in enrollment. It is because of efficiencies with staffing that, we could find. But I can absolutely guarantee that the services in IEPs are required by law for schools to provide. So that's something that's non-negotiable. The services have to be provided. I know that both Melissa and Beth are totally committed to providing those services. And if there's a case where we need to look further for outside of the school, we have the trust, but we also have the special education grant, the IDEA grant. And that's made, the purpose of that grant is for districts to cover unanticipated costs. So I share your concern and commitment for students with disabilities and to provide everything that they need, that the team decides that they need, so that they can make meaningful progress. So thank you very much for that topic to be here at this meeting.
Jillian, this is Greg Parrish. First, I want to thank you for participating and asking the questions. And I would concur with Beth, Dr. R. Killian, and Matt with everything they said. I can tell you that in my time on the board, that if there's a need that arises, we find the funds and the resources to address that need. And I have the utmost confidence in our staff and Beth that if something comes up in that school year and we need to find additional resources to help that child or those children, that we're going to do it. And we do have our special education trust, which is designed just for that. You have some valid concerns, but we're not going to leave anybody behind is what I'm trying to say. Thanks.
Rhonda, there's no more questions, correct?
I don't see any more hands raised at this time.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to move on into special education, which is budgeted at $1,324,123, which is a decrease of $32,006 or 2.36%. So as we just discussed in some pretty significant detail, that is the elimination of one educational associate, as well as the reduction of the psychologist and case manager from a 1.0 to a 60%. And those were offset by increases due to the cost of living adjustment per the CBA, as well as increases in our professional services accounts and our district placement tuition account. So our student activities is budgeted at $65,664. This is a decrease of $4,868 or 6.9%. And this reflects decreases in speakers accounts, extracurricular activity stipends, supplies and equipment accounts. Our guidance budget is $85,210, which is an increase of $2,280 or 2.75%. And this merely reflects the collective bargaining agreement's cost of living adjustment. Similarly, our health account is budgeted at $69,189, which is an increase of $1,149 or 1.69%. Which again reflects the cost of living adjustment with a slight reduction in employment exams and equipment accounts. So our improvement of instruction budget is $26,350, which is a slight decrease of $1,000 or 3.66%, and that is due to a decrease in our workshops and seminars account. And it's offset by an increase in tuition reimbursement, which we have seen uptick when we look at our historical expenditure history and our teachers and the anticipation of some newer teachers that may need professional development. Our educational media budget is $82,729, which is an increase of $3,440 or 4.34%. And this reflects the cost of living adjustment, step increases, as well as a decrease in our supplies account. So I'd mentioned technology earlier in the presentation. The entire technology department's budgeted at $191,406 or a decrease of $42,802 or 18.28%. I will note that this aligns with our school board approved technology plan. And it really reflects that one-time expenditure to upgrade our wireless system. And we did see a slight increase in our software costs that we did reevaluate this year for remote learning, and there were some other additional needs in software. Our Board of Education is budgeted at $42,483, which is a increase of $1,095 or 2.65%. My apologies, there is a typo there. It does say decrease. And that reflects some additional marketing and communications plans that the board does plan to implement. And that's to better engage our community, to inform the public of what the school, how the school is operating, what new initiatives we're doing, and try to better involve our community members. So SAU services budgeted at $150,493 is a decrease of $691 or 0.46% reduction. This reflects the central services from the SAU office, so the Office of the Superintendent, and it really reflects the new model that we've implemented as far as trying to create a more collaborative and cohesive SAU with our districts working together in order to provide for cost efficiencies, economies of scale, better curriculum alignment as far as program reviews and competency-based education, and really have a more high functioning and cohesive but consistent SAU, because that's the purpose of creating an SAU is you can create many of those efficiencies with a larger group as opposed to individual districts. And we've seen some real benefits by trying to be more cooperative. In last year's budget, we included a SAU-wide ESOL teacher, which was shared across districts. This resulted in savings of in excess of $30,000 across the SAU. And also provide for better services because we could have a full-time ESOL teacher that was able to provide more time to our individual districts, and typically you will find a higher quality teacher with a full-time position. We've been working on program reviews. Dr. Hobbs has started with math. That'll to better align our districts to prepare them for Winnicott. And then we're going to move into world language and progress from there. Dr. Eric Kalian has worked tirelessly to improve our special services department. Now, and now as a superintendent, and that includes items such as consolidating our bus routes so that instead of each district sending disparate their individual students to Rochester for an out of district placement, combining those routes and sharing those costs. She's implemented direct billing for Medicaid, so we're not utilizing a third party. That saves 7% on all of our Medicaid reimbursement. She's worked with our nurses groups to implement a software that's consistent and across all the SAU, which is improving the data entry time requirements for our nurses. There's I can go on and on, but I won't continue down that route. But this does reflect a essentially level funded SAU budget, and Hampton Falls actually has a slight decrease because it is based on a formula of enrollment and property valuation. Now Hampton Falls has seen a decrease in enrollment, so Hampton Falls allocation is lower than some of our other districts, hence the decrease. Our school administration budget is $173,783, which is an increase of $2,211 or 1.29%. And again, this is that the CBA cost of living adjustment and step increases for those staff members. I'm sorry, not the CBA. This is administration. It's the just the normal, the 0.8% cost of living adjustment. Our buildings is budgeted at $398,232, or a decrease of $39,269, or 9.86%. And this reflects a reduction in consulting services account, our renovations account, electricity and heating fuels. Again, that's an SAU initiative where we negotiated an SAU-wide contract for our electricity, natural gas, and oil accounts, which resulted in some significant savings. We have a reduction in substitute accounts, and that's offset by some increases in staff salary cost of living adjustments, step increases, as well as increases in our repair, maintenance, and insurance accounts. Our grounds budget is $45,576, which is an increase of $7,375 or 19.31%. And this is an increase in our annual lawn mowing and lawn care costs. We contract out some of those services. So we did see some cost escalation, and we also have some expanded grounds that need service with the outdoor learning area. Our transportation budget is $352,668, which is an increase of $51,969 or 17.28%. I had mentioned earlier in the presentation there was an increase in our special education transportation needs. Additionally, there is our normal increase for our first student contract. This is year 3 of a 5-year contract, which supplies our regular education, athletic, field trip, and any other transportation services such as McKinney-Vento. Our debt service budget is $366,153, which is a decrease of $283 or 0.08%. You'll see that this account should be relatively level every year. There's a slight you'll see a slight variation of $283 in this case, and this reflects the principal and interest payment on our bond issue for both the new building or the new addition project as well as the Kensington Road property. I will note that the last payment for the Kensington Road bond is scheduled for August of 2024, so that is coming up, whereas the new addition bond is scheduled to be paid off in August of 2038. So our employee benefits is budgeted at $1,498,622. This is a decrease of $1,458 or 0.1%. So this reflects those health insurance savings with the elimination of 3 benefits packages, as well as the very modest premium increase or guaranteed maximum rate. And those decreases were offset by that large increase that I had mentioned earlier in the retirements, the New Hampshire retirement system, which did increase our contribution, the employer's contribution rate by 3.22% and all other employees by 2.89%. Our interfund transfer, this reflects a transfer from the general fund to the school nutrition fund. So, we have a general fund, and that's for the operation of all of our school activities. And then we have the school nutrition fund, and that's a standalone fund for our school nutrition, our school lunch program. So the concept is that a school nutrition fund is intended to be self-sufficient or potentially self-sufficient via revenue from state and federal reimbursement, as well as for the payment of lunch from students and staff. Now, in a school such as Lincoln Ackerman, there's a very low free and reduced population, so very little reimbursement. So there's always going to be a deficit. So we are budgeting for a $20,000 deficit, which is an increase of $2,000 or 11.11%. And that's based on our most recent expenditure history. The food service program as a whole is budgeted at $157,533, which is a decrease of $3,557 or 2.21%. And that reflects a reduction in food supplies, equipment, and other expenses, primarily due to participation in enrollment. And it's offset by the cost of living adjustments and step increases. So that brings us to the end of our operating budget. I will note that the default budget is $6,891,053, which is $23,802 more than the proposed operating budget. So, so everyone is aware the default budget is the operating budget is the budget that would that the school would utilize if our proposed operating budget fails at vote. So the default is the prior year's budget plus or minus any contractual obligations, any items mandated by law, debt service, and then reduced by any one-time expenditures or eliminations of positions. Typically the default is lower than the operating budget, but in this case it is actually higher than the operating budget. So if our proposed operating budget fails, we will actually, the town will be assessed, will be taxed for a higher amount. So that brings us to the warrant articles. Again, in consideration of the economic conditions, we are proposing the inclusion of only expendable trust warrant articles that utilize the unreserved fund balance. So that means if at the end of the school year we have a balance, it either gets returned to the town, or you can utilize some of those funds to fund an expendable trust. So we had talked about the special education expendable trust earlier this evening, and this is how we fund those trusts. So we are proposing the funding of the building maintenance trust in the amount of $50,000, the special education trust by $25,000, and the healthcare trust by $25,000. I will also note that the rationale for the building maintenance trust is that we do know that we have some projects coming up that need to be addressed with the actual building. So the first of which is the HVAC for our gymnasium. So there is currently not a working HVAC for our gymnasium. So currently that precludes us from utilizing the gymnasium for any type of instructional use during COVID-19, because we're not able to move air in and out and refresh the air in that space. In addition to the fact that we're using storage, the gymnasium for storage, so that we can better social distance in our classrooms and other space. That's something that we had identified in previous years that needs to be addressed. COVID-19 and this airborne pandemic has just further exacerbated and amplified the need for fixing this issue. I'll also note that the balances for the trusts are, so for the special education trust, we have $213,501. We have a target of $400,000, and that's based on essentially the highest rate for an out of district placement. So if a student moves in, kind of the highest possible rate, it's in that range. I mean, that being said, we have students in other districts that are in the $500,000 range. So there's always that risk. Our building maintenance trust balance is $142,133, and with a target of $150,000. And our healthcare trust balance is $51,664 with a target of $150,000. There's an error here. The building maintenance target, I believe the board increased to address some of these building issues, which I did not reflect in this PowerPoint. So my apologies for that. I believe we moved it up to 250, but I will verify in our meeting minutes. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. I want to note the next step in this budget process is the deliberative session. So, this is a unique year for obvious reasons due to the pandemic. So typically we have a school board meeting prior to the deliberative session. We will be doing that same structure this year. However, the school board meeting will be remote via Zoom, and that'll be from 5:30 to 6:30. Then we'll have the deliberative session in person, and that will be held at the Winnicott Auditorium, because we do not have the adequate space at Lincoln Ackerman to be able to socially distance and hold the deliberative session in a safe manner. I'll also note that the town of Hampton Falls is holding their deliberative session at the Winnicott Auditorium as well. There's going to be a few changes. So we did consult with our legal counsel, and Attorney Casasa has advised that we bypass a full presentation at the deliberative session in the interest of keeping it extremely short and for public health. So the intent is to have a quick summary of the budget, read the warrant articles, open up the normal procedure for public to make comment, to potentially make proposed changes, and then vote and try to move through the deliberative session as quickly as possible. Additionally, we cannot require attendees to wear masks. So we will have a defined section of the auditorium for individuals who choose not to wear a mask. Throughout the entire auditorium, we will be marking off seating in order to keep socially distanced, so that people are 6 feet from each other. So in addition, the checklist supervisor will be at their normal desk. This will be outside the auditorium to check residents in to confirm residency. We will have to set up plexiglass so that those individuals are protected, because 6-foot distancing will be impossible through that checklist process. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have, or that the public may have.
I do not see any more hands being raised, and I have been watching my email. I have not heard from Mr. Janik, nor has he left a voicemail. So I'm going to assume at this time, since we've not heard anything, that he doesn't have any comment during the actual public hearing.
So do we go ahead and move forward to close the public hearing and then resume our regular meeting?
Yes, if there's no public comment, then you'd close the public hearing and then we'd resume.
If someone, Matt, if we close that public hearing and someone has a question once we resume our regular meeting, are we okay to answer those questions?
So that's the prerogative of the board, but I would be happy to answer any questions if it comes late.
So what I'd like to do, and anybody on the board, certainly share your thoughts. I would like to close the public hearing, re-enter our regular meeting or resume our regular meeting. And then if someone has questions regarding either the public presentation of our budget or even our regular meeting, that we accommodate them and answer what questions we can, unless the board disagrees with that.
I agree, Greg.
I agree.
Okay. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing at this point?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
And can I get a second?
I'll second.
Rhonda?
Greg Parrish? Is that a yes, Greg? Jason Farias?
Yes.
Jill Swayze?
Yes.
John Bailey?
Yes.
And Anthony Lang?
Yes.
Okay, I have the public hearing closed and the regular meeting has resumed at 7:38 p.m.
Matt, thank you for a very detailed and well laid out presentation.
Most definitely.
Thank you, Matt.
So, Greg, would you
Ron-
like me to go ahead and give Mr. Janik permission to speak since he had questions earlier?
Yeah, sure.
And Mr. Janik, we've just turned the microphone on for your phone. You'll have to unmute yourself, but you do have permission to speak. Just for the record, again, please state your name and address and your affiliation with the school. Mr. Janik? I did
Rhonda,
just now I don't know if he's on a delay or what, but I did receive an email from him literally right now saying he wishes to be recognized. We are trying to recognize you. So if you can unmute yourself, we have requested for you to be unmuted, but you'll have to do that on your end.
Rhonda, while we're waiting for that, can you answer a question?
Sure, I can try.
Under the public hearing, item C, reaffirm the 2021-2022 operating budget. That's new. Do we need to do something there? I'm not
That is
familiar
also
with
on there if needed.
Yes, I saw that.
Right. Should there have been any changes made, you know, that the board was doing, that was what that was for. That was just so that was already in there if it was needed.
Oh, okay.
So, Mr.
Why don't-
Janik, we've tried to give you permission to speak, but you'll need to unmute yourself. I keep requesting to unmute you, but I'm not sure what you've done. But, you know, we're making it available for you.
While we're waiting for Mr. Janik, I'd like to proceed forward if that's okay.
Sure.
And resume where we left off on the regular agenda. And at this point, we're under item 6, new business, the permanent superintendent search update. And Dr. Arkillian is going to give us an update on where we stand at this point.
Thank you, Greg. So let's see, last week, I reached out to board chairs, and we've identified board members from all of our districts to serve on the committee. And then from there, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Hobbs, who has been leading the next steps as far as gathering names, and he'll be working with the consultant.
Sure. Thank you. I'll just keep it brief because I know you guys wanted this to be more of a dialogue for the board. So as you know, we've contracted with NHSBA and the Bryan Group. We've been in contact with them. If you recall, their proposal had a pretty detailed timeline of tasks and focus areas. So we're adhering to that as tightly as possible. Last week, we had 2 separate communications, one to parents and community members, the other one to teachers and staff and administrators, looking for volunteers to serve on the permanent superintendent search. Luckily, we had a great turnout. 49 volunteers signed up. So we are in the process now of curating that list into something that's, good night, honey, that's both representative, but also manageable for us. So that's what we're doing this week, and we're in constant communication with the joint board chair as well as the consultant on that. Next week, we are going to look to take our tight group and give them a little bit of an orientation into the process, really late January, early February, looking at job description, what we want out of a permanent superintendent. And I think that dovetails nicely, as we've mentioned, with the joint board meeting on the late January, the 26th. Thank you.
Thank you, David. For the board's knowledge, if you don't know, Jason will represent us on this committee. Jay and I have spoken a few times about this. Just to confirm this, get an idea. The second part of this item on the agenda is really a dialogue amongst ourselves. As David just indicated, there's going to be a process with a new consultant group. As the joint board meets, we will certainly identify what we're looking for in the next superintendent, be it experience, qualifications, character, etc. But I was hoping to have this dialogue with the board so that as Jason enters these meetings, he has a good idea what we're looking for, what Beth's looking for in our next superintendent. And so I'm hoping that we can spend a few minutes here presenting some ideas for Jason or thoughts for Jason. If as we move on from tonight, if you have additional thoughts, you send them to Jason, email them to Jason. What I want you to be careful of, though, when we get into this emailing is we can't have dialogue. So if you have a list of 3-4 items that you forgot tonight that you want Jason to be aware of, please feel free to send him an email to indicate that, but really refrain from dialogue back and forth, just from under right to know, that's all. That being said, Jay, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. I don't know if you have anything you want to say about it, any comments yourself, and then we'll open it up to the board. Beth, at any point too, if you have any thoughts, please feel free to share. Jay?
Yeah, I think there's some basic core competencies and requirements that we can all sort of put, a range or a set of metrics together to define that. Things that go along, in my mind, it's experience level, let's say, where they've where they've worked, have they worked locally, a couple immediate ones, what's their depth of knowledge with this superintendency, have their background in education, And of course, as Greg said earlier, I intend to, and as a group, we should list these out and agree holistically what, yes, these are items and bullet points that we as the Hampton Falls School Board agree best represent our wishes and desires moving forward. So that will happen. So this is intended to get that sort of creative, those juices going, that mindset going. That's what's kind of high level going on in my head right now. We should drill down and not forget some specifics as this evolves, though.
One question I have is, as we move through the process, if it can be maybe a standing non-public agenda item, I would assume it would go in non-public because of the interview process, where we would be able to discuss it in a more collaborative way. I feel like during the interim search, that was one thing maybe we were missing, where you all weren't as intimately involved in the process as I was, and there was probably information I could share throughout that would have helped me be a better representative to the Hampton Falls board in that process. So that's what I'd really like to see, and I think it'd be very helpful for Jay as he goes into those interviews and those meetings to have more of a regular touch point.
So Anthony, in the last,
is that like me? What would that be? Would that be me touching base with a Zoom meeting or a few a memo, a slide? What would just?
I thought it would be more in our monthly meeting as just a quick, if we need it as a non-public, we could go into it. If not, Greg, you were going to say how you maybe communicated with the board in the last one.
Yeah, and we had several months there that the search went over. So what we did in our board meetings is we actually put something on the agenda to go into non-public. And at that point, what I did, because I was the representative, I updated the board where we were in the process as part of the search committee, kind of like you've indicated, Anthony. There were times you've wanted to share, just to keep the board on the same page as our representative. But we did that in non-public. The other board members asked questions, and we proceeded forward like that. It wasn't anything against what the search committee or the joint board was doing. It was just keeping all of us on our board informed about what was going on. So I would recommend that as well.
Yeah, I like that idea. Greg, why don't we go ahead and pencil that in?
Okay.
And that, let's fix it as part of our meetings moving forward. And I'll do my best to be prepared for those and make sure,
yeah, even in the first one, I feel like it's more like this. I'm very excited by this new group and their methodology and how they go through it. So I'm just very interested at a high level, but knowing, like, we don't know what we don't know for this new group. So I just, I'd hate to have you out there on the bleeding edge and then, realize, oh man, I wish I would have had this context from John or Jill or anyone.
David, if I recall, part of the time frame that has been presented by our consultants, it is pretty aggressive, and they're looking for us to have a decision sometime mid-April. Am I right in that assumption or that remembrance?
Sorry. I believe that April time period is when they're advertising out. They're collecting all the applicants, and there's going to have to be a interview process once we get there.
So we are looking at a few months here where we could go through this process that we're discussing right now.
Yeah, to your point, I think it's not only a good idea, but it's also possible.
Okay, thank you. So Jay, I've put that down. What we'll do is put it under new business. I think that's where we'll go. We'll just go into non-public. You can give the board an update on the progress at that point, and then any questions we may have, we can proceed forward.
Good.
If that works for you.
So Greg and folks, I guess, do we have any immediate wants or desires that we can talk about here? Again, I'll send out sort of a memo or an email that we can all, you know, and I would encourage you all to email me your, like Eric said earlier, your wishes, but anything out in the open right now we can discuss?
If I can start,
Yep.
I have a couple. Part of the conversation we've had at the joint board level regarding this is the next superintendent having familiarity with the district the way ours is put together. We've got a very complicated district here, a lot of demands. So I'm hoping that person has some experience with a multi-district school unit or district itself. The second one for me, Jay, is we've got some good initiatives underway right now. We've got SEL, we've got the competency initiatives,
Yes.
one or two others. I think we're making tremendous progress there across all schools. And I'd like to continue doing that. I think we're going in the right direction that way. Those would be my first two off the top of my head.
I have one that has stuck with me since our last joint board meeting, or just maybe a talking point. If you recall, I think Leslie brought up the notion that, and this is pre new school board members. I'm not using the exact same words, but she mentioned, or she alluded to the fact that the ownership district to district of their own policies had been, that ownership has changed, and she mentioned that she had hoped that, you know, where did that go? Or she made mention of that. I think, I wonder if that's something that you could speak to Greg or John. You know, have we gone back, or have we regressed, or would you like to see more of you know, Hampton Falls owning their own, or more control?
So I take that, or you want me to start?
Pardon, John?
Do you want to take that, or you want me to start?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So Jay, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I would just reiterate what Greg said. I'm in lockstep with him in terms of what I think we want from the next superintendent, both from a district perspective. You know, we've got 5 schools within our SAU. Managing all those has its unique set of challenges. So the person having experience with that and the wherewithal to be able to do it effectively, I think, is key. And I think there's great strengths that come with that too, because you can wind up drawing on the strengths of other schools, because no one can be a master of everything. And we talked about, you know, special ed specifically tonight, and several of the parents were concerned about it. You know, if we need a half of a person to help fill a gap, especially if it's a short-term gap, you know, there's other schools in the district that we can pull from. Or if there's a specialty, you know, it's not in someone's skill set at Lincoln Ackerman, but it is in someone's skill set at Seabrook or Hampton or wherever the case may be. We have other resources we can pull to bear, we can draw to bear. Where I think that's really key for us. And also I agree with Greg in terms of, you know, the SEL, competency-based learning, things like that. Where not every incoming superintendent is going to be experienced with those, but those are key initiatives for us specifically.
Right.
And to your question, in terms of policies, I think one of the really good things that Dr. Lapini did for us was trying to standardize them in the exact same way that no one can be perfect at everything. You know, I don't even know the number of raw policies that we have, but we couldn't possibly be competent or masters in knowing what all of those are for, what they're intended to do, and then drafting a policy that effectively executes them. But from a overall SAU perspective, you know, you wind up getting resources from Northampton, from Seabrook, from Hampton Falls, et cetera. So hopefully someone in that joint policy committee can actually speak to, okay, well, this is what this policy is intended to do. So when we draft it, this is the end goal that we're trying to meet. You know, that is a great thing for us. So I think that the commonality of policies between Lincoln Ackerman, Northampton, Southampton, Seabrook, et cetera, I think that's a really good thing personally.
Yep.
There'll be other board members, both on our board and elsewhere, who may disagree. They like having the local ownership. But the reality is you can't possibly be great at everything.
Right.
So having that group experience and being able to draw on best practices here, there, and elsewhere, I think is key for us.
That's really the dial. I mean, I wanted to hear, because obviously you two and Beth, you have the experience of seeing these last 2-3 years of Bill beforehand and then now. And I agree, John, I can completely see, you know, we're all, well, mostly sending our kids to one spot. We should be aligned in how we do that. But each district has their own nuances that we take care of. But I just wanted to hear, you know, your thoughts on that and how we should look for that with the search process.
Jay, I agree with what John said. From everything, the policy perspective in particular, I'm not quite sure where Leslie was going that night, other than maybe she felt that each individual district's losing some of its autonomy. I don't know. But from a policy perspective, I think it's smart for the district as a whole to all be on the same page, both legally, and I do think there's some fiscal advantages for a policy manual that is unified across the entire district.
Yeah,
I do think, and then if each individual district wants to create some of its own autonomy with its own policies, yes, we know each district's unique. So I do think there might be need of a conversation about that. But to John's bigger point, I agree with him.
Do you, Beth or Anthony, Jill, you have any comments? Matt?
I really don't at the moment yet, Jay. I'm sort of looking forward to see how this evolves in the competencies, so I have some information to weigh in on. But having not been here terribly long, I don't feel I have a lot to contribute yet. But thank you for stepping up for this.
No, my pleasure. Really.
I'll speak from the SAU perspective, because I kind of saw the siloed approach versus a more cooperative approach, and there is some vast in the challenge is to create kind of a happy medium between the two, right? Sure. Because it's insane to have an SAU with completely separate districts that don't maximize our services. It's just crazy. I mean, there's no point of having an SAU at that point if you're gonna work entirely independently. However, we recognize the importance of maintaining that autonomy, like a good amount of autonomy by district, and because there are certain things that make Lincoln Ackerman special, right? And the last thing we want to do is take that away, right? It's really it's those areas, particularly when we're talking about like purchasing or resources, where we can work together and share the cost, right? And you can pull, for like John said, we can pull from Northampton or from Seabrook, and those type of areas with policies. 90% of our policies are mandated by state and federal law. So why do that individually? Let's do it together. And then when it comes to the policies that are individualized, then you can make a decision to do something a little differently. Like if you want your class enrollments to be different than Northampton's, by all means, that's your decision, right? So I think you have our full support in that you should have control and autonomy, and ultimately you always do have control as the school board. So you can always override any decision. But I think it's important from our perspective that we try to work together in many areas collaboratively and try to prepare our students to move into Winnicott as a group with similar experiences, with similar curriculum, and learn from each other, and really provide for that, provide that alignment where it makes sense.
Right.
That's my perspective, seeing a really dysfunctional, siloed, independent structure versus where we are today.
Right. No, thank you for that. Yeah, that's good information.
Dr. Killian, I know that David and Matt are kind of spearheading this from the SAU's perspective, or at least that's my understanding. Are you going to be involved in all of this at any point, or are you letting Matt and David do their thing, if you will?
I am going to make a decision whether I'm applying for the position or not.
Oh, okay.
So I'm keeping myself out of it at this point, so that, I'm out of the process.
Yeah.
So when it comes to a point when I make that decision, if I'm not going to apply, then I will definitely carve a place for myself to be involved. I would definitely want to be involved on the committee and the entire process. But I feel until I make that decision, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to involve myself in the inside plan. This is a public meeting, so I think this is okay at this point. But once I, put the stake in the ground either way, then I can decide, whether I should be involved or not involved.
Okay, fair enough. And that's, I think that's a great answer to that question. Because one of the reasons I ask is that if you choose not to be involved in this, part of that search or put your name in the hat, so to speak, you will resume your role that you previously had, is my understanding. And so your interaction with that incoming superintendent is going to be crucial.
Definitely.
So, okay, thank you.
Great point. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. So Dr. Eric Halian's previous position is extremely important to maintain. So we do have that written into the contract that she would return if she does not continue in the superintendent position. And Dr. Hobbs and I did advise Dr. Eric Halian that we should separate and create that firewall to allow her the ability to take her time to determine whether it's something that she's looking to pursue or not. And in the meantime, maintain that integrity of the process so that it can be a fair and impartial process. So I think, Rhonda, is Don trying to speak?
I think so. I think he's finally unmuted himself. Don,
Hello?
can you state your name and address and affiliation with the school, please?
Yeah, Don Janik, 222 Exeter Road, Hampton Falls.
And
Hello?
Don, your question?
Yeah, let's start with a couple of things that may bounce back and forth between the presentation you had and the school board meeting. So the first thing I'd like to comment on is what you just finished up with. And your concern was that we may not be using the SAU services to help us align LAS with Winnicott. And one thing that I'm sure you all know, but I don't hear anybody saying it, there's a fair size population of students that go to LAS who have no parental desire to move on to Winnicott. So they ask for things and structure things at LAS. I don't want to say stomp their feet and, protest, but it's all in the interest of moving the kids on to privates and other places. So if we don't use the SAU the way it certainly could be, it's because there's a large segment of parents in this district that have no use for Winnicott. So I want to get that out there. Don't know if you believe it or not, but I can certainly find you a bunch of parents that would certainly back me up. And it's been like that for a number of years as I run my 3 kids through Lincoln Ackerman and Winnicott I certainly speak from experience. The next thing I'll do is like to go to enrollment. You had quite a discussion about the enrollment and how you're going to anticipate 203 for next year. And I'm trying to think, what data don't you have to get to that number? You mentioned you're going to do the basics, but you seem to be thinking there's other data out there that you don't have, that you can't get to get to 203. Is there something that I'm missing? Because you haven't said it, whatever it is.
No, we're pretty confident in that number, Don, but I guess the variability is because we've reached out to the families who are homeschooled or that are private, but you never know what, if they change their mind. I mean, they're not committed to attending. So we're pretty confident in that 203 number. But that being said, we're in uncertain times during a pandemic. Things change. Things have changed. So, we'll see how it turns out, but it's something we're certainly monitoring.
Okay. Well, I'd first like to state that it's approximately 8 years ago, we were at our high level of 285 students. I'm sure most of you who have been on the board or in the district realize that. And I've heard you tonight say that we have 192. So we're only 7 students away from losing 100 students at LAS. That's kind of significant. And I would like to say that every year I ask these questions at the budget. Now, I know I didn't attend the budget sessions this year, but I'm typically there. And I ask, what are you planning for the next budget year? How many students? And every year you got it wrong. Every year you were overestimated. Every year the enrollment has gone down. And every year you said it was either going to stay the same or get larger. So I don't really have much confidence in your number this year. So if for some reason we do get to, 185, we're down 100 students, it's like, darn, no one told you. And again, some of that is, maybe sour grapes because you continue to build LAS bigger and bigger, and 92 or 3 students later, you still haven't got it. So I wanted to put that out there. Could you tell me what the school board's class size, whatever you want to call it, theory is? I mean, what do we typically aim for? What is your goal for the class size of that LAS? Hello?
I don't know if we have a target. Somebody can correct. I don't think there's a target for a class size, Don. I think we have the children in our town that attend LAS, and those children that walk through the door, they make up our class sizes, whatever that may be.
Okay, well, I heard Matt say that we are in, we have a certain size. He didn't say what it was, but in his discussion on enrollment, those were his words, that Lincoln Ackerman has a school board policy of what class size it is you maintain. So either what he said isn't true, or you have a number, and I'd like to hear what it is.
So the policy doesn't give a range. It's a maximum. So I'd have to take a look at the policy, but I think it's like 20.
And do we ever exceed that?
I'm uncertain. We'd have to look.
I don't know.
Okay. Now, I ask at every meeting, I believe, it's not every, it's very close to it, for an attendance number, the number of students per grade. It seems like a pretty easy number. Obviously, when we get into budget season, you have that information because you must have used it to present this information tonight. Is there some reason why that can't be made available at every meeting? I mean, is there some reason why you don't want to give us that? Because I'm going to ask for it right now for planning purposes, so I can go through your budget and say, okay, what are we doing? Obviously, you've made some decision to eliminate a class, a teacher, for this coming next budget. And I'd like to know where it is and kind of maybe figure out on my own, if you don't have a strategy to tell me, why we're doing it. And if that's a strategy, maybe it should have been employed sooner and maybe again later if our enrollment continues the same trend it has for the last 8 or 9 years. So is that possible for me to get that information? And not only me, but other people in this district?
Don, it's not a set number each year.
No.
And I guess where are you going with this question?
January 1st, you must have had a number of the students in each grade level for 2021 at Lincoln Ackerman. And on February 1st of 2021, you're gonna have another number. Could you make that available so we can track that, so that we can make our own decisions and then ask the school board why you're doing what you're doing? If it doesn't seem to be a rational decision, and you could say, we're doing it because we can, that's fine. I just want to hear you say it. So if we have 11 students in a class, I want to know why, and I want to know what you're going to do about it. And I know in the past we've had that number because I had kids in LAS and there was a class of that size. So I know you're not afraid to go low. So just put it out there every month.
So yes, for years, when I was on the board, when I first got on the board, Don, yes, every meeting we put a chart out there for who was in the number of students in each class. A number of years ago, as a board, we decided to move away from that discussion during our board meetings and focus on issues that were current to us at the time. It's not that we're minimizing how many students are in each class, Don. It's we are taking the discussion in another direction. If I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but it's a practice that we don't do at our board meetings anymore as far as identifying how many students are in each class.
Again, I don't really care whether you do it at the board meeting or not. I just want to make it available. And that's the one time when I could have contact with the board to ask. You know, if I just have the free reign to send an email to Matt on the, 2nd of the month and say, Matt, could you please supply me with the LAS enrollment by grade level for the current year? Thank you very much. I'd be glad to do that. But I don't really feel as, a taxpayer.
You can certainly email. I mean, you have emailed me and I've provided you those numbers. So anytime you need it, I'll provide it to you. That's public information. I'm happy to provide it to you, just like I have in the past when you've emailed me. So please do so going forward.
Right, I understand that, but if it's if it's presented to the public every, month or whatever, they can see the trends that are going on, and then when we have discussions, they'll already be aware of this. It will not be the shock and digesting. It'd be like, okay, we see a trend. Every year they've gone down. And this year they're going down. So we can talk about what's going on. You aren't giving them a picture, and the whole thing about LES is how many kids are we sending to this building for $7 million a year? It's really important to a lot of people, especially when they got their last tax bill. So I'm asking you to make it a public information rather than individually designed for those few individuals that are, willing to step up and take the time to go get it. Why are you making it so difficult?
I don't think we're making it difficult, Don, but we'll take it into consideration.
I would piggyback on that, Greg, and let the taxpayer know, be aware of the amount of money the town is getting back this year. Put that on a graph just as well to make sure that that's equally publicized.
Okay.
The question I have in relation to this is on a month-to-month basis, do those numbers change enough to merit it? I mean, like, is it overkill? I mean, like, if we were going to do something, would it be quarterly or yearly? Like, I can understand, like, on a year-over-year basis, wanting to know, okay, there were 15 kids in the 3rd grade. Now there's 16 kids in the 4th grade the next year because, that those 15 moved up and one added. I mean, I guess I don't know to what end it would matter if there's 11 kids in the 4th grade and that's it. Then you have to have one teacher for them. If there's 19 kids in the... Okay.
Anthony, I don't mean to interrupt you. I think they're valid questions, valid points. We can take this under consideration. Don, do you have another comment?
Yes, I do. Matter of fact, I'll add on to the comment which was just stated, how much money they're going to give back to the town. And in your little pamphlet or flyer that came out, I got mine in my mailbox today. You state that you gave back $341,179, and it'd be nice if you broke it down from whence that came. You mentioned a couple of areas, but you didn't, go in and say, okay, from remote learning we saved $100,000. From the school board budget for the building project, it was $50,000. I mean, so you put a number out there, but you don't tell us why. And some of that could be from bad budgeting. So when we go to the deliberative session, we can say, what's going on here? Why are you getting $100,000 back from that account? What did we not see? What are we doing wrong? Why are we giving you $200,000? You're giving back $100,000 from that budget. So yeah, please do tell us why you're giving it back, and tell us why the Winnicott Cooperative School District was returning $1.2 million to the taxpayers. That money all came from all of us in the districts, and now it's coming back. What did we do to get all that money back? Why were you holding on to $1.2 million that we gave you and you didn't use? So those are just comments.
Okay.
I don't need an answer for them. You brought it up. Somebody on the board brought it up, and I'm saying, okay, please, just do it to us. Help us out. But
So
give us a little layer.
Don, so we did provide that report with an explanation. That's in my year-end summary that I report out on and provide a written document that outlines exactly where the sources of those funds came from and why we're returning those funds, both at Hampton Falls and at Winnicott. And I mean, this past year in particular, I mean, there's really one answer. We went remote for a third of the year. So obviously we saved a significant amount of funds. So it certainly wasn't under, budgeting errors or anything like that. We didn't have kids in school for a third of the year. So we returned a significant amount of funds. But I'd be happy to send you that memo with the detail, or if you want to get on a phone call, I can go through that in detail with you. But we did report that out at a board meeting, and that was published. It's in board docs, and it has all that detail.
I understand all that because I work in your board docs and I follow this. But if you put this out in a little 3-paragraph flyer and you don't tell the people what happened, it's like, shame on you. If you're proud that you returned $341,000, tell us why and where it came from. If you don't, then don't put it out there. Put some teeth behind it. Put some knowledge behind it. This is like painting with a freaking roller, and nobody understands anything.
You're a little limited in the detail that you can send out in a newsletter, and I think it gives you another general idea.
Don, do you have another comment?
Yes, I do. I want to go to the last page of the budget that you guys presented in your board docs. It would be page 8. And it says your revised budget for the year was $7,061,606.21, and your available budget is $652,079. And typically that is the number after you've already spent money or encumbered it for the rest of the year. So why is that number so big? Well, not so big. Why is that number what it is? Just in a general sense, can you tell me why? What's causing that number to be, large? What is not being accounted for or is not going to be spent? Because I can't believe you were going to give us back $600,000 in June.
Well, as you know, Don, encumbrances don't encompass all the expenditures for the school year, so we'll certainly not be returning $600,000 to the town. There are a number of accounts that will be spent down as we go through the next 5 months of the school year. But there are some, we have recognized some savings this year. So that includes on the benefits side. We are saving, on health insurance and dental because, the
comment specifics
I
about
knew you
that.
couldn't. I knew you could. Okay, so wait, don't. I'm just going to say I pointed it out. Yeah.
There may have been an issue.
No, I'm done. No, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Back to the topic with Jay. I don't know if anyone else has any additional input for Jay at this point regarding our next superintendent. If not, what I recommend, if again, if you want to put some thoughts in an email to Jay, just kind of really stay away from dialogue back and forth. Let Jay collate what we send him or you send him, and that will give him an idea what we're looking for going into this search.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. That pretty much we have our next meeting dates. Before we get to the meeting dates, Caroline or Dr. Eric Killian, I want to welcome you as our interim superintendent. I apologize for not doing this at the start of the meeting. Thank you for submitting your name and accepting the nomination, and the board wishes you the best, and we're going to do what we can to help you out and make this as successful for you as possible. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm in week 2. It's already, it's good time.
Good.
Okay, our next few meetings, we have we have the policy committee tomorrow, joint board on the 26th, our regular meeting on February 2nd. As Matt indicated, we will do our regular meeting starting at 5:30 via Zoom, and then we will do our deliberative at the high school in the auditorium in person at 7. Do we have anything to go into non-public, or are we good?
You do not.
Okay, anybody have anything else? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, everybody. Matt, great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
Great job on helping Matt and
Thank you,
working
Beth.
with Matt to put our
Great
budget
job,
together.
Matt.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good Good night. night.